Welcome back to the Midweek Update. Hey Mepham, welcome to this week's Midweek Update.
Today, let's take a look at the lives of remote learners and their teachers and see how some BMB shows have been filmed this year, despite the pandemic restrictions.
This and more as we take a look at what's going on this week on Midweek Update. I'm Haley Hepworth.
And I'm Hannah Broxmeyer, and welcome back to the Midweek Update, the BMB show that brings you closer to the people and places in and around the Mepham community.
Well, Hannah, we made it to episode 50 of the Midweek Update.
Over these past few years, we've been through a bunch of hosts, different segments, and even months of virtual episodes during the shutdown.
But through it all, we've continued to showcase stories from around the district reported by the students at BMB.
Even this year, pandemic restrictions have prevented us from recording next to each other like usual, but we've been able to stay on the air through the use of our second studio. Earlier this year, I took a more in-depth look on why we started this and how it's worked so far. Many viewers of BMB shows like the Midweek Update and Morning Announcements have been wondering how our shows have been able to go on with all these restrictions. That has been done with the use of Studio B. Because of COVID-19 restrictions, our anchors can't record next to each other without masks on. For the first few episodes of the Morning Announcements, they took turns recording one at a time so they could be socially distanced, but in order to allow the anchors to have authentic conversations and to make editing the shows less difficult, another solution was found.
We're trying to still have the host be next to each other and be able to talk to each other, but within these COVID guidelines, you can't be 6 feet. You have to be 6 feet apart, and in our studio, that's really not possible right now while having your mask off. So we started Studio B with our teleprompter and our camera that's still connected to our network and to our TriCaster.
Every time a show, like the announcements or Midweek Update, is recorded, this secondary studio must be set up and connected to our control room by the BMB crew members.
So I set up Studio B every ninth period to make sure that they're ready for the Midweek Update and Morning Announcement shows. But I just pretty much come in here to set it up to make sure that everything is ready to go so that we're not wasting and spending time, shooting time, setting it up.
We measured out how far away the camera is from the anchor inside the studio, and then we measured that same distance inside Studio B so they look the same on camera. And then we brought in a light kit to try and replicate what we have in the studio.
Although things aren't the same as before the restrictions, the crew and anchors try their best to make shows seem as authentic as if everyone was in one room.
Back when I was allowed to be next to my co-anchor, it was a lot more fun, and we used to, make jokes next to each other. Now it's, I'm saying things in my ear and then it's delayed, and then eventually I'll get a laugh. So it's not the same, but it's not hard.
So sometimes with the lighting, it could look a little off. It could be obvious to some that they're in two different studios. Others may not notice it. It really depends on how that certain person looks at it.
Once we're allowed to take our masks off and be together, I do not think this should be continuing. I just think it's better to, it's better to have the connection with your co-anchors or, for the Midweek Update, the Morning Announcements, all those shows. It's better to be together than to be far apart. So I just feel once this is over, we should have this Studio B.
Setting up and recording from two different studios has its difficulties, but it's the best solution for now to keep our shows on the air that you all know and love. From BMB, I'm Hannah Broxmeyer.
Recording from Studio B has been weird this year, but it's a lot better than having to host the show from home like last spring.
Yeah, and hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be able to return to normal a little bit more and actually record from the same studio.
But for now, restrictions are still a big part of our lives here in Mepham, including many students learning from home.
BMB's Sean McQuillan got to see how some students who have been learning online have been doing so far this year.
Because I don't feel that I think there's just full attention there.
Finnegan Corcoran-Doolin is a full remote learner at Mepham High School.
I've been in remote learning since the beginning of the school year.
Educators have been teaching both in-school learners and remote learners during these challenging times, especially for those students stuck on the computer for over 6 hours daily. Their education during this pandemic has been only one of the toughest challenges so far.
Yes, I do think it's very difficult for remote learners. They are stuck behind the screen. We as the teacher have to pay attention and make sure that if they do have a question that we, notice that they had the question. And it's very difficult to hear when you're home and things are going on in your classroom.
According to staff members, it is difficult for remote learners like Finn to cope with such a testing task at hand. But what do they really think?
It's definitely been challenging, especially with all the distractions that are on my desk. You guys can't see them, but there are a lot. I've been able to pay attention because I honestly just have a motivation to do good work, and I want to make sure that I still do good work and the same amount of good work as I possibly can.
I don't think it's too challenging. I think at the start it was, but I think throughout, not only have the students been teaching, but I think the teachers have, because I think it's gotten better along the way.
Although it is not as hard for remote learners as most would believe, those who have been taking part in virtual learning still miss those personal interactions every day. Recently, there have been remote days almost every week due to a recent spike in cases of COVID-19. The real question is, do these days help?
I know I enjoy having the remote days because I have all of my students. I can get to see all of their faces. We can work together as a group. I can ask one question, everyone hears me. Someone can answer the question and everyone hears them. We could do breakout rooms where we could do groups where people that were home can now work alongside and have conversations with students that were just in the room before.
Yes, honestly, they do. Especially with some of the classes where there are people who are very outgoing and very talkative.
Like, you know, there's no, it's full attention to every virtual student by that point. So I feel, without a doubt, I think maybe I feel a little bit more comfortable by that point.
The district should keep assigning these remote days because they're helping teachers and students not only cope with the current situation, but helping to adjust to the difficult one in remote learning. For BMB, I'm Sean McClone.
Thanks, Sean. The year has had a lot of challenges so far with restrictions in school and a lot of students learning online, but things are starting to look up for the future.
Right. Sports are back in the district, with Mepham's football season starting off last week, which you can see on the BMB YouTube channel.
Matt Manna was involved in BMB's coverage of the game, and he's back now with the latest news in Mepham sports.
Thanks, Haley. And for the first time this year, we've got actual sports highlights on your midweek week in Mepham sports. Let's go right down to the football field, where this past Saturday, the Varsity Pirates returned to action against crosstown rivals in the Calhoun Colts. The Pirates got on the board in the opening play of the game, when Colts return man Kyle Audie muffed the kickoff that was quickly pounced on by Brandon Sue, giving the Pirates an early 6-0 lead that they would not give up. Brandon Sue and Ryan Thier led a balanced Pirates rushing attack, and senior quarterback Billy Kender was 13 for 21 with 202 yards and a touchdown in the air, adding 71 yards and another touchdown on the ground. Senior Tom Simone was flying around the field delivering big hits to cement the Pirates' 41-7 victory. For the Colts, Nicole Devlin added an extra point to the Colts touchdown, which were the first points scored by a female athlete in a football game here since 2017, when both the Colts and the Pirates both featured female kickers, which was the subject of the very first news package created by BMB, which you can see on the BMB YouTube page called She's a Football Player. Last night, the Pirates girls volleyball and boys soccer team were both on the road with conference matches at North Shore and Great Neck South, and tonight, the girls tennis teams and boys badminton teams will be in action. And if you're looking for more sports, this Monday, BMB will have our cameras at the girls soccer game against MacArthur, so a very busy return to the world in sports indeed. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Matt. Like he said, be sure to stay tuned to BMB to catch more Mepham sports in the future.
Well, that's it for the 50th episode of Midweek Update. We'll be back next week with all new stories from around the BMCHSD to bring you inside the parts of the community we don't always get to see.
Until then, I'm Haley Hepworth.
And I'm Hannah Broxmeyer, and we'll see you all next midweek.